All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Built to Scale. And today's guest is a good friend of mine, Carey Colley, that Carey is a risk advisor with Baldwin. And I'm going to let him dive into that a little bit more in regards to his role. But the idea is within construction businesses, there's lots of risk, right? And even today's topic is a really relevant risk for a lot of construction businesses that I don't think that they spend it. I mean, they know that it's there and they are dealing with it in some way, but I don't think they're looking at a comprehensive risk management strategy around it, but it's retainage, right? That we're going to be talking about retainage today, which the frustrating thing of, things getting caught up and collectibles getting caught up and things not getting paid. Every business has to thrive on cash flow. And so we've got to figure out how to reduce the risk of retainage. And Carey's going to be talking a bit about that today, about some considerations that, some construction business owners may not be thinking about today, but should be on the table. So super grateful to have you on the show, Carey.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So Carey and I are located in Houston. We're friends with each other. We've gone bow and arrow shooting with each other at one of his events, right? So, Carey, tell us a little bit more about yourself personally, that to let the audience know who Carey is.
Yeah, sure. So, Carey Colley, like I said, I'm with the Baldwin Group, risk advisor, concentration in construction. I'm a married father of three. My wife and I are just about to celebrate our 18th year of marriage. So it's been a wonderful journey. Started out my career in the construction business, spent about 10 years doing it. Love it. It's a great business that I love being a part of, and being on the risk and the insurance side of things gives me the ability to still, play around in that world.
Tell us a little bit about your experience or your background, though, because there's a lot of people that are in insurance that have spent most of their career in insurance. Alternatively, you actually know construction. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So when I first got out of school, I was building homes, construction manager, overseeing 6, 8 homes at a time in different neighborhoods around town. Back then, the financial crisis hit in 2008, and I was able to make the transition into the commercial side. And I spent about 6 or 8 years in the commercial business for one of the biggest commercial general contractors in Houston in the state. Um, did a little bit of everything, some superintendent work, some project management work, uh, you know, bidding, pre-con. We kind of did a little bit of everything over the years. And so I've seen a lot of the industry from a lot of different angles. And that's really what's been fun about the transition I made about 8 or 10 years ago into the insurance side, is being able to just kind of connect some of those dots. For a very unique business. I mean, what I love about the construction business is it is a tangible product. You can see what you're doing come up out of the ground. Tell people all the time, I love driving around town with my children and, pointing out a building. Dad worked on that one. We did that, and you can see this thing come up and become something that people touch, use, interact with, because we did schools, we did large scale retail, so things that lots of people interact with all the time. And so it's just a great business. And I love it. I love being around it. It gets into your blood and just becomes a part of who you are.
It's always neat to hear stories of the reality of taking pride in one's work, right? And that, uh, you know, whatever that might look like, but especially in construction, that you have a living proof of something. And some people can have disconnect in their work. They might be, doing things behind the scenes, et cetera, et cetera. There might be a connection through, the clients that they serve, but there could be a lot of, third-party service providers to construction businesses that could say, hey, I had a hand to play in that. But there's nothing quite like saying, I was intricately, a part of building that. And that's what's neat about this industry, right? For those that do build that, yeah, I mean, you get to see your work unfold and live on and carry a legacy for some time. And so love that, brother. Appreciate, the reality too is you're coming into this risk advisory role with all that background experience. And I think that's what's unique is for you, Carey, that, yeah, you're not just talking from, the desk perspective, but you're talking from I have been inside a business and truly understand and have seen things. So I love your perspective in the construction space. And, I know too, you were very focused in the construction space in regards to your practice and, how you advise clients and who you choose to advise. So kind of diving in from here, kind of going back to, what our topic, is, it's retainage. It's one of those just, a lot of construction businesses just assume like it's just one of these things that you just kind of have to live with it. Like, there's just a cost of doing business, right? And there's considerations that are missing to this. But first, I just want to ask, there might be people on, this show that, especially like when they look at their financials, they may somewhat understand the concept of retainage, but not fully. Can you help explain that for our audience? That how would you define retainage? Walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I would you hit the nail on the head right there out of the gates. Like it, most people just look at it as this is just the cost of doing business. It's part of what is out there. It's always been that way, and we don't see any opportunity or way to change it. Uh, and if you take a step back and think about it and what it is and where it fits into a construction project, it does make sense on the surface. Um, it's my ability. If I'm hiring you, Mason, to come in and work on a project for me, I'm going to hold 5%, 10% of money back so that, when I do need you to come back and fix something at the end of the project, or we've made a change, I've got a carrot that I can hold over you that says, hey, I need you to come back, and I'm not giving you this until you finish this piece of the project that needs to get done. And in the commercial world, some of those could be a dollar value that is so big you're not going to walk away from something like that. I mean, it's for some it's a pretty substantial sum of money, but that's the intent behind it, and I think it's been taken advantage of over time to turn it into something that is not it's not being used for what it's intended. Uh, I've talked with some contractors over the years. One of them, a very large general contractor in Houston. At any given moment, they're carrying at the time we talked to them, $42 million in outstanding retainage. Some of these were 3 years past substantial completion. Some of them even longer than that. It's not supposed to be that. When the project's done, you should get your money. It shouldn't be come down to auditors and all of these other people in the mix that can just create something out of thin air to just hold that money. Because what people don't realize in a lot of cases, somebody else is holding that money and a substantial sum of money in their account that's gaining interest that they're using for different things that you can't. And that's what really hurts. And talking with that one particular general contractor, one of the things that they mentioned was they were kind of getting sick of being the one that's having to take all the bullets for the owner from all of the subcontractors. That's another one of those things that a lot of people don't realize. The, the general contractor's holding retainage on the subcontractors because he's having retainage held on the project from the owner. You're not getting paid your retainage until they get paid their retainage. And if there's nothing they can do to get that, I mean, like I said, that contractor that we'd met with that's holding 42 million, just a couple days before that meeting, had just left a retainage discussion with one of their clients that was 3.5 years past substantial completion, seven-figure retainage, still didn't get it. And he's like, I've got people knocking on my door that want their money. He's like, it puts everybody in a bad position.
It just burns so many relationships, right? And what's sad is it was meant as something good for the building owner. It was meant as something good, but like you said, and just in life, many good things can be used in the wrong hands, can be used in a bad way. And it might be that, there might be something strategic as to why they're holding on, or there might be, legitimate dispute. There could be illegitimate disputes. And then it could just be that the building owner ran out of money and they can't pay. And, and that's tough because it's like, hey, how do you do credit checks? How do you vet, the developer, the building owner, that they're going to have liquidity to get all this done? You're hoping, but at the end of the day, the GCs and the subs, it was meant to prevent, risk or to manage risk for the building owner, but it puts actually a lot of risk on the GCs and the subs. And I look at it from this perspective that for our audience has never really understood the opportunity costs related to retainage funds. it's super important to understand. I mean, the reality that like top performing GCs in this nation, I mean, the top 5% are lucky to earn over like a 5-year average, 8 to 10% net profits. GCs,
They would jump for joy at that number.
yeah. I mean, I'm talking again, top 5% of GCs in the nation earn that. That's not average. That's the top. And, the reality, I mean, we're a little bit later, but especially if you're having to draw on your credit line, and I get it, there's this concept of you shouldn't have to if you're a GC, but the reality is there's very few pure GCs. A lot of them have self-performed labor, et cetera. And you do have to cover your overhead costs. Like you have an admin team that you have to continue to cover on payroll. So all that retainage hung up, it might be cash flow that maybe you're drawing on a line of credit. What's the cost of the line of credit? It's 7%, 8%, 9%, 10%, whatever that is. You're paying all of that on the cash that is sitting out there. And yet, the project was only ever destined and budgeted to ever have you earn net profits of 8 to 10% at best. And so you're just massively eating through your margins in such a significant way. And it's creating so much risk. I'm sure that, for you also at Baldwin do surety bonding, et cetera. It's like when you start seeing all those things get tied up, it's like, well, are they going to run into a cash problem that can help them pursue other projects? So there's more than just, hey, that guy's got me hung up over there. There's compounding effects that our audience has to understand, that one, from an opportunity cost in the actual financial sense, but it could be costing you other projects because you don't have the liquidity needed that your bonding wants to see to have you even pursue the next big project. So like there's so many opportunity costs here if you're not managing retainage well, and you are leaving it out, hanging out for 3 years, which is terrible. So you know, at the end of the day, like I think most people kind of look at this with particular strategies, like they'll put liens in place, et cetera, et cetera. Walk us first, Carey, what you have seen as the normal strategies of what people do. I mentioned one, but like walk us through the gamut of outside of, any alternative like risk management or insurance that can be put in place. Like what are usually the things that can be done today to try to get that retained collected, or that there's some type of collateralization of it of some sort? What does that look like today?
It's funny, there's not a lot of options that are out there. I mean, you kind of touched on it with a couple things there. You've got some letters of credit and things like that that can be done as alternatives, but it's the cash is king type of deal, and that's really the main thing people want, is to just be able to have the money, because that's what I feel like, if I'm the owner, that I feel like I have the most power with that to get the result that I want out of things. And the tough part with it is not so much that there's not alternatives potentially that are out there. It's getting somebody to accept that. Because obviously we're talking contractual stuff, and if you're talking about a big institutional type client, a government level type client, or one of these, just a big developer, it sometimes it can take an act of God to get somebody to make a change to a contract that they're just not interested in. And this is where it gets kind of interesting on this, because like you'd mentioned before, it came about and seemed like this was, beneficial to owners, because that was their way of being able to ensure that they get the end result that they want. What's come about, and in some of these conversations that we've had, is especially big institutional types that are doing lots of work, lots of development. People have long-standing relationships with them, not always, good relationships, is that when it starts to be, we know that XYZ school district or municipality or something like that is a slow payer when it comes to getting out retainage. Well, guess what? People know that. As one of those types of entities, you're using my money, your money, taxpayer money to fund these projects that you're talking about. So you should be doing everything in your power to be the best steward for the public dollar that you can. And if there's a reputation that's out there that, you know, XYZ municipality takes forever to get retainage out of it, you may be limiting the pool of people that are even willing to bid the project because they know I'm never going to get my money on this, or it's going to be 5 years from now, and I just don't feel like dealing with it. Maybe the private sector is busy enough. There's enough money out there that I'm just not even going to mess with that public work. Or I know that it's going to take forever to get my money out of it, so I'm going to put an extra 10% or something like that on the project. So again, are you being the best steward of my money as a taxpayer into a facility that you're getting the best result for what you're doing? You think that you're getting the end result, which is you're using your power and your might to get what you want out of it, but ultimately, are you costing us, the taxpayer, a lot of money because you're limiting the people who are even willing to do the work?
And I think I would say just as a general business principle to anybody out there that, there is that consideration. You might be afraid of turning away business because somebody might not be willing to accept your terms on retainage or what you'd like to see. Like you may be willing to take retainage or do retainage, but you might be hesitant. And I think for yourself, to any business owner out there, you have to ask the question, if they're going to push back that much on you, what is their real intent? And do you want that project anyways? Like, do you want that as a client anyways? Because if they're not willing to put, in the contract really reasonable terms, like retainage in theory is fine. Like it was identified as a good risk management tool, especially for the building owner. So it's fine, but it's like, okay, well, maybe you can, as a, builder, maybe you can have that the retainage can only ever represent a certain percentage, and that percentage threshold, and that, okay, you're willing to do retainage, but like it has to stay within this amount, or there has to be a particular retainage release date after the project end date. Like there has to be some type of schedule put in place with particular parameters. And so the idea being that it's not just an open-ended arrangement where you could have millions tied up. Like you have to have something that's like, no, we have proof. We did everything that was supposed to be done, and you can go to an attorney and, put in a demand and say, it's clear that we got everything done here. I think the idea in general is to have it not be open. And, again, there's a little bit here of, especially new builders, maybe just interest in building relationships and getting their foot in the door. That's all fine. It just understand the risks that you could take in that, and that generally, if you're offering retainage, like put particular caps in place and put limits in place around it, that all with the intent that it's just, hey, like you're interested in doing something for the building owner, and that's great. Like you're willing to give something up, but at the same point, you have to have limits too. And if they're not willing to, work with you on reasonable limits, yeah, you have to beg the question whether you really want that job or not. That, there's going to be pain points that come with it. Like you said, that, they may hang you out for 3 years, like a client example that you have, and that would be awful. Right. And so just real quick, because I know we're going to go in and you have some thoughts on, how can you potentially, do an alternative strategy in terms of an insurance product around retainage, but is there anything else that we can try to get on the plate here of just things to consider that, like I've mentioned, like, hey, try to put a particular reduction schedule, like put terms against, what amount of retainage you're willing and under what timeframes. Anything else that you feel like should be considered here, Carey?
I mean, the time schedule is a great thought, and a lot of them have something like that already contractually in place. And I use an example. When I was still building, we used to build for one of the biggest retailers around, and we didn't get retainage released, you know contract closeouts, things like that for this particular customer until grass grew. So that seems like it wouldn't be that big of a deal,
Yeah,
but
especially in
I
Texas.
mean, we're in Texas, so grass grows all the time.
Yep.
But I use it as an example of a project that's going to be a year, year and a half long, and let's say we've got a site subcontractor is going to be the first person out there. They're going to have their contract is also going to be big. If they're, let's call it a $50 million project, maybe 10 million of that is to that particular person. So the first person on site in a very labor intensive and equipment intensive role within the project. They're the first ones out there. It's an 18-month project, and we're doing this project in Detroit. and the project finishes in October, and let's say everything else goes perfect, but I've got to have grass grow before we can give anybody, before we can sign this thing off and get our final, letters of substantiation on the project. So it may not be until May that they get the growing conditions to even get the grass to then even start the process. So even with all of the things that we put into place and all of the plans and the timelines and things, there's so many different ways to take advantage of what's there. I mean, one of the contractors that we've talked to from a GC standpoint, what they do, especially for their subs that they have good long-term relationships with, is they have, retainage payout plans internally where they're a bigger company than the subs that are working for them. They're in a better cash position than some of the subs that may be working for them. And they just say, all right, we'll go ahead and pay you guys out and wait for us to get ours so that we don't damage you. Because ultimately, I mean, we are talking in some cases substantial enough sums of money that for some it could put them out of business. Maybe they did jump into this big project that's maybe the biggest one they've tackled, uh, and 100,000, 250,000, whatever that number is, could be the difference in, do we keep the doors open or not?
It's all related to the cash flow, right? That at the end of the day, you could have built in nice margins, et cetera, into the project itself. But if you're doing any self-performed work, or if you're on the sub side, especially, et cetera, and you have all the admin fees, like you have to pay for your accountants, you have to pay for your administrative folks, you have to pay for anybody in the office if you have estimators, salespeople, whatever that might, be considered. You used to have all that payroll, you have to cover your office rent, et cetera. You got to keep the lights on. You have a ton of expenses to cover, and yet somebody
Interest
can,
payments on the equipment,
yeah, and yet
millions of
you,
dollars equipment in some cases.
yeah, and yet you could be strung along for 6, 12, 18, in many months. And it all just comes down to this issue of cash flow, that you could have had great margins built in, but that doesn't matter if you're not collecting on them. Like I heard this phrase once in my career, and it still sticks with me. It was an older gentleman. He said, the sale ain't final till the cash is in the bank. And I mean, that's just the reality of it, that the sale isn't final until the cash is in the bank. And it's tough because, you can record earned revenue on accrual basis books, right? Like you earned it and therefore the revenue sits there. But, there's a reason a lot of businesses like to stake on cash basis, accounting, because it's like, well, it's not that it's just earned revenue. I've collected it. So therefore, to me, it's revenue because I collected it. But we can go into semantics about accounting, all that stuff all day. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, it's a very relevant cash issue. I think just a plug for our audience out there, this is one of those things that, you really do want to have a decent line of credit in place to battle against this. That as much as you might have really good bids and you're working with great clients, and, and you have great contracts, I would even suggest too, don't think twice about doing a credit check or a soft credit check on your clients as well. That, do they have history and proof of paying their bills? And watch that. And, there's credit insurance, et cetera, too. They can do reporting, on those particular building owners and those developers, et cetera. But ultimately, do they pay their bills? Like, that's a fair thing before you even get in and do a bid for them. Do they ultimately pay their bills? And that would be a big consideration, because that will at least help you get away from people that would intentionally, hold up the retainage for the sake of, it's a little like, I'm just not going to pay this, or like, I'm going to get away with holding this out forever. There's other considerations though that, especially for long project cycles, a lot can happen in 2 years, right? And so I would even say, continue to monitor the credit of that client. That, are you putting yourself at risk that you're a year and a half in and that developer might have run out of money, right? And then all of a sudden things are getting squeezed, but other people are triggering that, hey, they're getting late on paying their bills. And they might be paying your bills, but they might not be paying the retainage, right? And so, that's a consideration I would put in place is, don't, there are softwares out there that you can do a soft credit check. And then once you know more about the client and you can get, a tax EIN, you can certainly get, some credit reports on them. I think the other thing too, again, like I mentioned, is a line of credit. Making sure that we've talked with a lot of builders, Carey, about this, where they say like, well, but there's an origination fee with the line of credit. And so why would I pay that if I don't feel like I really need that? And it's like, no, 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 no. You're looking at it completely wrong. It's an insurance premium. Like, because there could be a day when you need it. And the day when you need to draw on your line of credit and max it out is also the day that you can't be shopping for a line of credit, because the bank will absolutely see all of that and it'll spook them that you're now in that position. So it's better that you try to get the line of credit before something bad happens and you have it. So an origination fee on a line of credit is an insurance premium. View it in that perspective, that just have it ready. And it's okay to always ask for a little bit more, that each renewal cycle, see how much more you can get, and just have it as backup for when these instances occur that you still have to make payroll, but Retainage is getting hung up, because you can still do all the right things, right? You can do credit checks, you can put the right contract language, etc. Something could still happen that the retainage isn't paid. Like, it's still a risk. So Carey, I mean, we kind of dived in there, but like, to that point, you brought forward to me, and we were, we're personal friends, and so you were kind of talking, and it was timely too. We needed to make an episode just about retainage. That's a really relevant thing in construction business, accounting, and finance, management. But there's insurance products around retainage, and walk us through that to help us understand, like, that could be a viable option for our audience to consider too. So walk us through that.
Sure. I mean, there's, like you mentioned, there's trade credit risk and some of those different things that are out there that can be a part of it. But one of the ones that's kind of piqued my interest over time has been the idea around these retainage bonds. And they it's a great way using surety to provide this, because unlike an insurance product, where some loss is to be expected, so something like you have your work comp or you have your auto policy, you're paying a premium, and it is the amount of premium is determined based on how much loss we think you're going to have, and do you or do you not, exceed that amount, and that's ultimately what's going on there. But some loss is expected. Surety is, in the simplest terms I could put it, is a zero sum game. There should be no loss when it comes to surety. So to go back to the idea of an owner having the capability of having, that lever that they want to pull when they need to get Mason to come back out and finish this project, I need some sheetrock work done, or I need some electrical work done, whatever it is that you do. I need to have that lever that I can pull to get you come out there. And I've seen the money being the lever that I have. I've also had conversations with some contractors who have flat out said, we got so sick of this dragging on as long as it did. We walked away from six-figure retainage. Just said, just threw our hands up and said, we're not dealing with this anymore. Go find somebody else to do it. When you're using something like a surety product like these retainage bonds, um, I actually think it's potentially a better lever to pull, especially for contractors that do a lot of bonded work, because that's ultimately their lifeblood. Being able to have surety and put bonds in place is the determining factor of whether they can or can't do work. And because surety is a zero sum game, you think that by allowing a retainage bond in lieu of actual cash held, you might lose some of that power that you have over those contractors and subcontractors. I actually think it's a better one, because if you try to draw on that retainage bond, you potentially could be jeopardizing their entire surety program. Because again, sureties typically, there should never be a loss against, no claim ever against surety. So you start making claims against surety, you might jeopardize their entire, bonding capacity for all of the other work that they have. So if you really want to get somebody to jump, jeopardize their surety, and you can really get somebody to jump more than, I'm holding 50 grand and I need you to come back out, and they go, we've been drug along so long, keep the 50. Find somebody else. Use that money to go get someone else. So I I'm actually, you know, as we talked about before, one of some of the hurdles of this stuff is just getting it accepted contractually, and finding that owner that's going to go, well, I think I'm not going to have as much, power. I'm not going to have as much strength in the negotiation in that position. And that's why I use that as an example. I actually think in some cases it's a better position from an owner standpoint. Um, and you've got, for both parties' perspective, for lack of a better term, it's like having an escrow where the money exists. I don't have to worry as the sub or the general contractor that somebody is going to run out of money, and I'm not ever going to get my retainage because I'm using this product in place of it. Me as the owner, I don't have to worry that potentially that sub or that general contractor goes out of business during the course of the project, and I may not ever be able to get them. I've just got this thing that exists regardless of what happens that is out there. It's really a great position for both parties to be in.
I think it's to that point, it's describing the value proposition of it, right? To a building owner that to your point, it's like, well, that's what they may not understand is that, well, by holding on to retainage, especially those subs all the way down the line, you may put them out of business. And therefore, the person that started the work cannot actually come back and finish the work. And granted, they'll say, well, that's our contract with the GC though, right? And they'll try to, say all that, but it's just a good building owner isn't going like they want to get into the building and utilizing it. And they want, like, a good building owner is going to want to not drag their feet either. Like a developer or anything of the sort is going to say that thing needs to be, it needs to get going. Like we need to get occupancy in it. Like we need to move on from this at this point. So, but walk
Yeah,
us through
because
because
ultimately time is money, right?
yeah,
So
for
if
both sides.
for both sides. So even, yes, that's part of your contract with the GC to, for all of that kind of stuff. But ultimately, if somebody goes out of business and we need them to come back and do something and they're not available to do it, that's costing somebody, whether that's the GC, whoever, time to go find somebody to do that. Even if it's a short period of time, time is money. If I own a retail store, for every day that I'm not open, I'm losing revenue. So even if it's a short period of time, just having to find somebody and go through all that, it's the same concept as we talk about from an insurance side, like with wrap up programs for big projects where you're putting a SIP, an OSIP, or a CSIP in place. Part of the reason you do that is so that I know that there's not going to be a bunch of finger pointing and a bunch of lawsuits and things that are going to come out from all of these 150 different subs on this project. I control all of that, and so I know that there's not going to be those things that ultimately cost me time and cost me, effort and things that I didn't want to have to put into it that just slow things down.
Walk us through though. Let's take a step back. Like, how does a retainage bond work in the first place? How should we be viewing this? How does it work?
Putting, anything concrete in place. I mean, if you've got a surety program in place, it's pretty easy to just have this be, another aspect of that. Typically, it's going to run somewhere in the, 1 to 5% range, more like 1 to 2%, but, for to be conservative, let's call it 1 to 5% of what the retainage amount would have been, and you just get a bond that goes into place, and you pay the premium on that bond, and now both parties have this security blanket sitting in between them that, as long as it's accepted from the owner's perspective, is a great tool. Uh, you also have a little, as a contractor, you have a little bit more strength in your hand as well, where if it is a letter of credit or something is what you were using as an alternative product in lieu of this, you know, whoever that owner is can go dip into that letter of credit at their discretion, and you have no real recourse to that. With a surety product in place, if they want to make a claim against that surety that you've put up there, you get your day in court. You get your opportunity to have a say. They're not just going to, from a surety standpoint, just hand the money over because somebody's made a claim against it. So you have some way to come back and say, no, I don't agree with this. Here's the circumstances around that, so that it can't just be hit like that letter of credit can. So you both parties also have a little bit of protection in place so that we don't have arguments and finger pointing back and forth that I say this, he says that. Gives you a little bit of arbitration between.
Walk me through. So, if I put if I'm a builder and I go ahead and put a surety bond in place, recognized in my contract, am I assuming then that the building owner is not really going to hold retainage? Like they're going to pay the retainage, and they should pay it because if they find that the specs of what I built don't match, like there's outstanding things, they can threaten or just pursue the bond itself and make a claim. And so therefore it incentivizes the building owner to go ahead and cash flow everything, but they have the risk mitigant of they can make a claim on the surety bond. And if it turns out that, there is issues there, that they'll get a payout. And that's how it can be worked out. Am I right in saying that? Cool. Cool. Yeah, um, like, in regards to these surety bonds, are they available in all states? Like, this
That's
works
the
nationally?
great thing about it is this is not a conceptual thing. This is
Yep.
not a pie in the sky kind of idea. They've actually been around for a long time.
Yep.
Um, it's statutory in 4 states right now, Washington being one of those, where it is required that these be an acceptable means of providing retainage when it comes to, public projects. Uh, so these are again, it's not a pie in the sky. It's not, hey, I'm thinking about this thing that I think could work. It exists. They exist right now in all 50 states, and you can get them. I mean, if somebody were to call me right now, we could have a retainage bond by the end of the day. The problem is you can put a retainage bond all you want, but if somebody's not willing to accept it, so that's why it's a two-way street is getting, the statutory states where they're requiring it, owners and developers don't have the opportunity to say no, whereas, Texas is not one of those states right now. So if an owner doesn't want to accept it, they don't have to. You've got to get that negotiated in advance, but if you can, and we can help navigate through contractually how to get that put in there. It's got to be done on the early phases of a project, but if you can get somebody that's willing to accept it, you can have one today.
Like Baldwin, because I think that's going to be the key thing, right? Is that um, the contractor may conceptually understand it and may want it. I feel like they can even insert it into a contract. It could just get redlined, right? Like insert it into a contract is not, I think it's missing the value proposition behind it, right? That the other side may not understand that, hey, like it's to your benefit to consider this. And it makes all parties happy. It makes, it's a relevant tool. If you just stick into a contract and make it redlined. So like, for Baldwin, like would you all participate in any discussions with the owner, like, in terms of the presentation of a bid or proposal and contract, that can you stand there with a contractor in communications with the building owner and help them, kind of sell the value proposition behind it, like why the owner should want to consider this?
Absolutely. I mean, and we've done it in some other places. And like I said, that's why I wanted to bring up earlier, kind of where the value is to the owner, because it seems like we're having this conversation from a construction side, from a builder side. Like there is benefit to both parties. There really is. And understanding that, I think people just don't know about it, especially owners don't know because they're not, contractors are participating in surety. They understand how surety works. They understand what the concept behind it is. From an owner standpoint, developer standpoint, they don't have the intricacies of dealing with it like a contractor does, other than that exists, and it is this thing that we just need to put out there. So understanding that, it could be a net benefit for you as well. In fact, could in theory be even better. Um, and yeah, we're happy to participate in the negotiation piece of it to get this put into some contracts because it's we've had some of these conversations from an AGC level and different entities. We're not to a point where getting it statutorily required or acceptable is anywhere close in the cards in Texas, but conversations are existing, are happening, and like I said, something that's there. It's something that can be done right now, and it's something we'd be happy to talk with anybody and help through the negotiation process.
Walk me through, like, and I agree conceptually, get this at the front end of the contract in place. Right. I mean, in any business relationship, once you're in, it's really hard to change the terms. I get that, there's change orders, et cetera, but generally it's hard to change the terms of a contract when you're in it. But for the sake of the question, can a surety bond be added into a project or an amendment to a project contract after the fact? Have you ever seen that successfully done yet?
I have not seen it done. I don't see why it couldn't, as long as both parties are okay with it. Um, I it's, again, it ultimately boils down to the contract and what we can get, everybody to agree to and get into writing, but I don't see why it couldn't. It would certainly be much harder to get it done, but
I think to our audience, like, I think some of this maybe shouldn't be considered so black and white where it's like, oh, you should only go, surety bonds. Like, it's a tool in the toolkit, right? And it's one tool that, can be very relevant and, is coming forward, that a lot of states are saying, hey, like, absolutely, it needs to be considered on the table. Um, for the sake of it, it might just be a tool to where, yeah, if a client doesn't want to do it, that might be your own filter as a business. That's like, well, then we don't want to do business with you, right? I mean, like that could be a filter in itself, like because at the end of the day, you know, if a building owner meant to have your best interest in mind and to pay you in the first place, and they're afraid of that concept of the surety bond, and they already have the intentions of paying their bills on time, et cetera, and doing the right thing, if that is the intention and they're truly sitting there that I just need something that helps me manage my risk to get the project completed, the surety bond can work. And so you're kind of testing and validating even what people's intentions are. And so if you float it out there in the contract and it comes back and they say pound sand not happening, it might just be a decision point for you at that point to determine, do you want to walk forward or do you need to put teeth elsewhere in the contract too, right? And I know, again, our audience is a lot of, contractors and builders here, so we're not necessarily looking from a builder owner's perspective, but yeah, I mean, considering that way, I mean, when you're telling me what you're telling, it's like I would absolutely float that and say, like, man, if they're not even willing to consider this or at least ask a question about it to understand it, like maybe they've never seen it, but they're at least willing to ask a question about it. If they just say absolutely pound sand, that's not what we do. Um, maybe, yeah, take a step back, question whether this is the right project for you, and that's okay too.
and I think that goes back to, kind of the concept we're talking about, right from the get-go. Like, what is retainage? What is the purpose of it? And where does this fit into the project? Like, look, retainage bonds it's a product that we can provide as part of the Baldwin Group. Um, Quite honestly, every broker out there, every surety broker out there has the capability of doing it. They may not know what they are, but every one of them can do it. Um, the bigger question, the bigger concept is with all of this is really around retainage reform and how can we do something, anything, this just being one way of doing that to solve what's an age old problem when it comes to construction. This just again being a way to do that. It's like we talked about, like it is being a better steward for the dollar, whether that's public funds or private funds. You know, give you know, giving you the opportunity to have a better project, a more profitable project, a lower priced project. Just doing something other than the status quo of I'm going to take 10% of your money and I'm going to hold it. It just isn't a viable way to do this anymore. However, we figure out how to look at what we're doing with retainage in a different light, that's ultimately what we're trying to figure out. It's just something, anything. And yeah, if somebody's not willing to at least have the conversation, I think you're right. I mean, it is in some ways, I tell people surety is it's kind of a way from an owner standpoint. If I'm requiring surety on a project, no matter what that is, performance bonds, whatever bid bonds, that's my way of you know, filtering out potentially anybody that I don't want on the project because I'm basically just making you put up show me that you have the wherewithal, the financial standing, the size, capabilities, whatever to do this project. So I'm using that as my floor to put me in a better position where I don't have the chuck with a truck that has never done a project like this or just started and they're going to come in and they're going to undercut everybody because they don't have any idea what they're doing. I kick that kind of stuff out. So you're already using this concept on in other avenues of the project and other avenues of evaluating what you're doing with your project. This is just another way in that same, universe. And yeah, if somebody's not willing to at least hear it out, maybe that is your filter to them.
Well, I mean, even something that comes to mind, and I know we're going to have to, kind of do a final takeaway here at some point, but what comes to mind is even, I mean, for a building owner, and again, like going back to how you sell the value proposition as a contractor or builder, but for the building owner, the fact is to get the bond, as a builder, you would have had to go through some hoops to get the bond. Like there has been a third party verification of the fact that you do good work, that you have the financials to support this, that you can fulfill the requirements of the bond, because surety bonding representatives and companies do not want to be in the business of paying out claims. Like they make their money when they don't pay out claims. So they're not going to put a bond in place on somebody who they feel like could be a massive claim for them. And so it's just providing, I mean, it's like getting a CPA review or like other things like a credit check, like it's providing a layer for the building owner to understand, like there has been some type of third party review. And even for a building owner, well, hey, and for the contractor, you can emphasize, who are you getting bonded with? What's the grade and the rating of the insurance company that's bonding you? Like that they're a good insurance company too. And that what are their measures? Like there's ways to show the value in this. And so, yeah,
As
Carey,
a
I
building owner,
appreciate it.
look at as you pre-qualifying your
Yeah.
subcontractors before you even get to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
this is a company that will make it through the end of this project, and this
Yep.
will get done. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, you're just getting a level of verification, of third party verification, that you're not just taking it at word, right? And so I love this, that I you know, I wasn't ever thinking of doing an episode on purely retainage, especially going down into retainage bonds. And I love the fact that, Carey, that you brought this idea forward, because this is something I think more builders should be considering, at least a tool in the tool chest that they should be considering in regards to how they're managing their contracts and making sure that they manage their cash flow. And so I'm just so appreciative for you to come on and help explain it for us and dive into it with us, brother.
I appreciate you having me on. I mean, it's a great topic. Like I said, when you and I talked before, like, go sit in front of a room of contractors and ask them. Raise your hand if you've ever had a nightmare situation with, with as regards to retainage, and you're going to get, I believe, 100% of hands say, "Yep, been there." This is just a conversation and a concept we all ought to be looking at.
100%. Where can our audience, where can they learn about more about you, more about Baldwin? Yeah, what do you want to leave them with?
Sure. You can. Yeah, am I allowed to put my phone number out there? I mean, by all means,
Be
give me a
careful,
call.
but yes, you can. But I be careful. You don't know who will call you, but
Uh, yeah, I mean, if anybody has any questions, I mean, maybe I shouldn't put my information out there. Reach out to Mason if you know him. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Happy to connect with anybody there. I'm on a couple of committees with the AGC. If you're AGC members and you're ever around at any of the events, happy to talk with anybody that's there and see you around. And you know, I'm uh I'm out there. All you got to do is find
yeah,
me.
look for 'em.
LinkedIn is a great place to find me. Reach
Yep.
out to Mason. He knows how to find me.
Yep. And yeah, I think to that point, everybody, that Carey's active on LinkedIn, that look up his name here, Carey Colley, that he is active on LinkedIn. So that's definitely where you can find him. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me and then I can direct them to Carey. But so appreciate having you on, brother. Thank you for the insight you brought to us today.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. All right. Well, till next time, everybody. See ya.
Hi, everyone. So, if you enjoyed today's episode and you found value, or it raised some questions for you about the next best steps for managing your finances in your construction business, please reach out to us at bradycfo.com. There's a contact page there where you can fill out, and that will come straight over to us. Either that, or you can personally find me on LinkedIn. My name is Mason Brady, and feel free to send me a message, and happy to chat and talk through anything you're facing today, and happy to provide some advice. So thank you all. Appreciate it. See you.